Welcome back, dear viewers. Now, we all know that participation in sports offers numerous physical, social and psychological benefits for children, including improved fitness levels, improved teamwork and character development. However, in some Muslim communities, parents may face certain challenges and reservations when it comes to encouraging their children to engage in sports from a young age. This hesitancy is often rooted in cultural, religious, and maybe societal factors that influence parental decision making. Now, it's no coincidence that we hardly see any Muslim representation in mainstream sports today. But with the latest generation of youngsters being born and raised in the UK, or more so the West, where there are more sports opportunities, it's encouraging to see some of our youth fully engaged in professional sports. One such shining example is Head of Academy Medicine and First Team Support, Hashim Ali, who joins me now in the studio. Hashim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the introduction, Mullah. Really, really kind of you. Thank you.
No, it's absolutely our pleasure. Firstly, I just wanted to get, I guess, a lot of us dream of when we were younger, we dream of getting into football. You know, the times where we're running around in the park and it's like, oh, it's Gerrard or it's the... Yeah. So how did you get into football then?
I think once upon a time I was one of those kids that was having those dreams.
Yeah.
Best. Through age, I realised that dream can be achieved without needing to become a footballer as such. Okay. I think I realised quite early that I'd never had the talent enough for it. It doesn't matter what the hours I was going to pray for, I was never going to be blessed with the talent for it.
Yeah.
Best.
Okay.
From a very, very young age, football was always a massive passion and interest.
Yeah.
It was nothing that was bred through family. My family actually are far from that. Okay. My brother doesn't watch it. My father only watches the big tournaments when Iraq play, when the World Cup is on or the Euros are on. Yeah. Best. That football side of it was my passion. And away from that, from our communities, there is always a little bit of pressure in terms of getting into healthcare or getting into almost the STEM subjects and those careers. Yeah. And there wasn't that massive pressure from my side of the family. That was also another passion. And so through the years, you find that I began to discover that you can blend the two. Right. Because the sporting field requires people who are responsible for the healthcare side of it. Okay. And so I was very, very fortunate enough to find that quite early. And sort of that directed all the university choices and so on. So
in a way, you kind of fulfilled your parents' dream, because Iraqi parents, obviously, they all want to. I mean, it is a bit of a stereotype and a generalization of all Iraqis. I'm sure not all Iraqi parents want their children to be doctors or engineers, but you know, fitting into the stereotype, you managed to fit both things. One, your passion for football. And you managed to get your parents, look, I'm working in the medical field.
Exactly that.
So that's fantastic. So tell us more about your role then. I mean, I've got it as Head of Academy Medicine and First Team Support.
Yeah, so my role, essentially I'm in charge of everyone under the age of 21 from a medical aspect.
Okay.
So that can involve anybody joining the academy on a professional contract. That will involve doing their medicals, for example. Or anybody joining on a scholarship, or any of the players that are in the under nines all the way up through the academy until they're in that first team bracket, where I then become the support role. Okay. So it's a really good role where you get to experience everything. Yeah. And have a little bit of management input, director input, and those kind of bits. So alhamdulillah, it's a very, very good role I've been blessed with. It's a rare hybrid role. I'm really glad to have it.
Yeah. So when it comes to, you said, so under 21, that's so you're pretty much of a senior role here. Yeah. Did you have to start from kind of a lower role and then go work your way up? Is that how it works?
When I first joined, I was the under 18s physio. So that's essentially the lowest full-time, not the lowest, but it was the lowest at the time, the lowest full-time physio that you can have in the building. Yeah. And alhamdulillah, within a short period of time, I was given the Head of Academy Medicine role. And then that developed on to become the Head of Academy Medicine and the First Team Support.
Right. So taking it back a few generations, obviously, you know, and I've spoken to a few youths who are now in their, say, 20s, and they're like, I had a passion for football, I had a passion for sports, but my parents discouraged me. Now, when you do speak to the parents, the first thing is like, oh, they're going to deviate away from their religion. Yeah. So working in sports, do you see any signs that could be the case?
I think ultimately it comes down to one main point. Now, my profession is my study. I studied physiotherapy, and my profession is a physiotherapist.
Okay.
Now, if a family's son or daughter decides to study physiotherapy, is that then deemed to be a field that's going to deviate them from the religion? No. Sah?
Yeah.
But then it comes that the sport generally has a stigma around it, that these are people on X incomes, these are people with X lifestyles, that their son or their daughter might then be involved in. And a lot of it involves a lot of traveling, involves a lot of living away from home, even from a very young age.
Wow. When
athletes join clubs on a full-time basis, the clubs offer them accommodation to keep them closer to the club.
Wow.
That's from the ages of 16. As you can imagine, the mind is still developing and nurturing. So from that aspect, yes, you can become more exposed to it.
Okay.
But what's to say you can be a physiotherapist in the NHS and the team that you're working with has that environment about them anyway, and they can deviate you.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's about, first thing is the iman that you have and the strength of the iman that you have. Because you are going to be alone.
So you're going to be tested?
Yeah, 100 million % you will be tested, 100 million %. And so your iman has a massive part to play in it. And if your iman is strong, then inshallah you will be able to get through without any issues.
Because the culture, as far as we know, is, you know, it's a very, we call it a laddish culture.
Yeah, 100%.
It's all men, it's all boys. And typically when it comes to those types of scenarios, when you're with men who are non-Muslim, typically the conversations might not be religious. And it could, you know, you then feel under pressure to peer pressure. You want to fit in, you want to be one of the guys, one of the boys. So do you, not do you recommend, but is there a situation where, let's just say that the 16, 17-year-old isn't too strong on his iman? Can there be a situation that they can get deviated?
Yes,
they can, but there's always ways around it,
and
right?
I think before this moment in time, it was stronger. And I think as we go further and further on, it becomes, there's a lot more of an apparent Islamic involvement in the sport.
Okay, here we go.
And that comes through a lot of different things. One is there's a association called Najum Sport, and they have a big involvement, or they're trying to get a big involvement into lots of different football clubs. Because like you said, there's a very laddish culture. There's a culture where actually the people that work in football, because there's no exposure whatsoever to people from our backgrounds or people from our religions, regardless whether that be Muslim or not, there's a limited exposure to people from the BAME community.
Wow.
And so when someone enters from that community, they aren't actually sure what the ins and outs of it are.
Okay.
They're not sure what the raisings were, or what the guidelines are, or what the religious teachings are. So a lot of people, even today, for example, maybe I will get asked, do you want to go for a drink?
Yep.
Okay, and between us, that's a different question. Between them, that's a different question. And so when I say, yeah, that's fine, but I don't drink.
Yeah.
You don't drink at all?
Yeah.
Like, I don't drink. Why is that? Oh, because I'm Muslim.
Yeah.
Oh, is that one of the rules? And so on and so forth, and it delves into a deeper conversation. So there is definitely a lack of information in that industry. And Najum Sport is coming through to try and highlight the prevalence and the growing prevalence of Islam there.
So there are agencies out there, Muslim agencies out there, hoping to educate the bodies that are involved when it comes to English football, to tell them, look, there are certain Islamic cultures, practices. So Ramadan, I haven't even asked you about Ramadan, because Ramadan must be a whole different ball game. But do you think the rise of players like Mohamed Salah and Zidane Iqbal, I think it was, the rise of these players have now created more awareness of Muslim culture within football? 100%.
There's a lot more being put into place to support Islamic players. Because alhamdulillah, we've been able to show that there is a lot of hidden talent within our communities. And we need to bring that to the forefront. But what we also need to do is break down the barrier for that hidden talent to come through. And part of breaking down that barrier is informing what Islam is all about. But also informing those that are related to those who want to get into football. That actually we can get into it without being deviated, or we can get into it and support all the Islamic teachings.
I guess, look, I mean, the way sometimes I look at the whole football world, it's like it's in a bubble in itself. No one really knows what goes on behind the scenes. Everything's all hush-hush. But what we know is that there's a very massive laddish culture and all drinking and you know, teenagers on wages and all of that stuff. So it's a scary world for parents. I get that. But if you actually just break it down, it's more or less similar to any other occupation. Like I was working in the corporate world a couple of years ago, and I get the same question asked. You know, do you want to go for a drink? Well, I don't mind going for the drink, but I can't drink. And then exactly the same conversations. So it's definitely the same thing.
It's exactly that. I mean, you look at the world of banking, for example. Yeah, it's massive in banking. I think the most important thing that I've realized working in football, the most important thing is they always keep an eye out for your character and your behavior. So the biggest thing is if you come in believing in something or standing for something, then you can't get shaken off it.
Really?
Because when you get shaken off it, that's when the players are out to get you or say things about you or in a jokingly manner, of course.
Yeah, banter.
When you say, for example, yeah, I'm a Muslim and I believe in this and that's it, full stop. Oh, so you've never done it? Oh, fair play, like, well done, you know?
Right.
Rather than, yeah, this is not for me, but then you end up getting deviated into it and you end up doing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can shake a little bit the reputation and the respect that you.
So what you're saying is when you come into sports, you're already armored with your principles and your faith, and when you go in there, people respect that more than you being like, well, I'm a bit wishy-washy about my religion, and that's going to take you all the way down.
Exactly that. When you stand by it, you earn a lot of respect, a massive amount of respect.
Okay. So how are Muslims generally perceived within the football world?
I think it's generally that there's not a
there's lack of education.
There's a lack of education. There's not a proper perception of it. It takes somebody to be in there for them to learn about it a little bit more. So, for example, like QPR having more Muslims in there. Watford are having more Muslims. There's a lot more exposure for them to actually learn about. And you sort of see that spread into the community as well. I mean, you see it, you talk about Mohamed Salah. Mohamed Salah and the religion was first exposed to in Liverpool Football Club, and then it was exposed to into the whole of the actual city for them to learn a bit more about it. So it definitely takes someone or a few people to go into the environment to inshallah break the barriers down. So
there was one thing I want to talk about Ramadan, I guess. So in terms of Muslim players balancing their faith, their faith-based obligations like salah, for example, and fasting, you know, how does it work with match schedules? Like, I've always wanted to know, for example, you know, do they allow them to break their fast at certain times? Is there a prayer room, for example? Are there anything like that?
The prayer room question, there's a lot more going into it now. A lot more clubs are starting to involve prayer rooms in their training grounds, or multi-faith rooms. In their training grounds. Now, I hope to see that spread a lot more. I think there's a limited number of clubs at the minute that have it, but they're definitely starting to embrace it. They're starting to realize it, and the importance there it has. And the importance that spirituality and feeling comfortable in spirituality, the importance of that to the athlete and how the athlete performs. And it all goes through a mental well-being side of things. And in terms of Ramadan and fasting, so for example, a big part of my role when it comes to Ramadan is making sure that the athlete who is observing Ramadan is fully nutritioned, is well rested. Maybe his timetable will be altered slightly. Maybe the nutrition team or the chefs need to have things prepared for him that he can, for example, take home for breaking his fast. So, for example, in the last Ramadan, we have a couple of Muslim athletes, alhamdulillah, and we altered their timetable slightly so they don't need to come in as early in the morning. We know they're going to come in and they don't need to have breakfast, for example. So we allow them extra time to have that rest after praying Fajr and sleeping a little bit later and doing that mile and whatnot. And for example, we altered their nutrition. So we had meals ready for them after training. They will take their meals home and heat them up for them to eat. But in addition to their meals, we also created for them special protein shakes and meal replacement shakes that are a little bit easier to consume for the body. So that in the limited time that they have where they can eat, of course, we've been having Ramadan for a few years now. So in the limited time that they have where they can eat, we're ensuring that their nutrition is met as easily as possible, while allowing their sleep to be met as easily as possible around the A'mal of the Holy Month.
So how can we get kids to get more involved in English football? How does it work?
I think we need to improve confidence as much as possible, number one. Not just in the kids, but in the families as well. It's a very, very difficult thing to answer, to be honest, because I think becoming a professional footballer, a lot of it is down to luck.
Oh, really?
One person can see you and think you are very talented, and another person can see you and think you're not talented at all. So it takes the right person to see you. But what we can do is increase exposure to as many people as possible to increase the chances of that happening.
How does it work? As in, do they have to, as in the age-old argument is that they have to start at the age of 5?
Not necessarily.
For them.
No, not necessarily. No. There are a lot of athletes that have come through the process and have started at a later age. Or, yeah, for example, I was with an athlete this morning who only started, I believe, at the age of 15. And now, mashallah, he's playing in the first team regularly. So, as early as you can start them, it's better to build their technical ability. And again, that has a fair chance in improving their chances. If you build their technical ability, build their exposure to football, build their knowledge of football language, then we increase their chances slowly and slowly. And that can be through anything, through grassroots football, through academies, whether that's paid for or whether that's offered. But as much football as possible, as much exposure to the sport as possible.
So leagues, basically, you're talking about like very, very, very grassroots leagues.
Yes.
Start there, and that's where the scouts usually...
Yeah,
so you want to be scouted, basically.
A lot of scouts are at grassroots football. Some scouts have the sole job of going to grassroots football matches to pick up talent from a young age. And I think, alhamdulillah, whoever lives in London has a lot of exposure. Can have a lot of exposure. Scouts are always in London. There are so many clubs in London that look for players. So I think getting them playing as much as possible means that eyes will eventually come onto them. And inshallah, through that increases their chances of being picked up for whether that be an academy.
Is there an age where it's just too late?
Yeah, I think if you haven't played semi-professional football by the ages of between 21 and 25, I think the chances are very slim.
So talk to us about a week in your life, because you know when I was talking to you on the phone, like I'm traveling with the team and I have to come back and that. So how does that work then?
Yeah, there's no 2 weeks that are the same.
Really?
At all ever.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah, there's a lot of things to do in the week. For example, you know, just this morning I was at a consultation for a player in central London. Yeah. So the days can vary like that. For example, you know, a normal day, if we're just training, we have a good sort of team within the team of bonding and bits like that. So alhamdulillah, we come in the morning, we do gym in the morning, and then we get on with player assessments for those that are injured, and we have our team meetings in the morning before planning out the day for training. We'll usually train, come in and have lunch, and then get on with all the treatments and everything that we need to do from an admin point of view and from an injury rehab point of view and whatnot. And then we go on to our match days where we will either be traveling, sometimes traveling from the day before and staying over if the travel is long.
Really? Do you mind me asking what team that are we?
Colchester United.
Colchester United. Okay, cool. And where are they in the
League 2?
League 2. So you got the Premier League, League 1, League 2.
Premier League, Championship.
Oh, Championship.
League 1, League 2.
Okay, so it's not that too far off.
No.
And where are they now in the?
Not very good.
Not very good.
Yeah, we won't mention that bit.
Okay.
Then, but the academy for Colchester United is called category. It's in categories for the academy. So you have category 1 through to 4.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, Colchester is in category 2, which is the second highest in the English system.
Okay.
So we produce a lot of footballers from a young age. We produce a lot of footballers that go on to play full-time football in the whole system. So the academy term side of things is very strong, very, very strong.
So if someone wants to get involved, could they reach out to you and could you like put in a good word for them, or does it work like that, or does it have to go through different means?
Which side, the footballer side or getting involved with the team?
The footballing side?
The footballing side, we have a recruitment team.
Okay.
And the recruitment team we have is very, very open to receiving a lot of videos, a lot of CVs, and they will go through each and every one of them. And you know, they're more than happy to have people message their CV, have people message their videos, and then say, okay, for example, we'd like to invite you down for X game, for مثلا a trialist game, or we'd like to invite you to take part in training for a week and a half or 2 weeks to see how you are. Of course, there is the reciprocal of that, and they might say, you know, unfortunately, that's not what we're looking for at the moment, or those positions are filled at the moment, maybe at a different point in time. But that's what I mean. It's just sometimes it can just be luck, being at the right place at the right time. Honestly,
Hashim, I could be speaking about this topic for hours and hours and hours. I'm really interested in football and the way it works. You know, I only the other week I took my son to England versus Italy through Imam Hussein charity. They were giving away they got some tickets as part of the charity program, and just the buzz of a stadium and the screaming and the shouting and the goal and all of that. I take it you have that same kind of buzz.
100%. That's the passion. That's the passion of it, you know. And the adrenaline that when you win a game, that adrenaline makes you feel like you're part of that team. You support them. You're 100% in and around that. 100%. When you're in and around it and you win a game, you've been a part of that. You know? It's not just the players that are out there or the manager that's on the sideline. Everybody who's behind the scenes, the kit man, the therapists, the psychologists, the chefs, everybody is a part of that.
That's fantastic. Hashim, Ali, I really, really appreciate your time.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I actually look forward to having more kind of in-depth discussion, because I think it's very, very beneficial for the parents. But
100%,
thank you,
anytime.
Thank you, Hashim, very much for your time. That was a fantastic discussion, I must say, with Hashim there. Now, coming up after